The background for this is that I'm hosting or leading the effort for a wireless village at DEF CON this year. We did not have one last year. A number of people missed it, and I opened my big mouth and said I'd take charge and try to put something together. So I've got a number of people helping me out doing little projects and stuff. So any of you coming to DEF CON, you may get to see this or a different version of this depending upon the feedback tonight. Okay, what we're going to talk about is the standards and amendments. Then I'm going to go a little bit into the physical layer, talk about the MAC layer, and then I'm going to discuss a little bit on the security. Not so much the lack of security, but how the security is structured and for wireless. So there are a large number of standards in the 802.11 family. As you can see, 802.11 actually came out in 1997. The original speed was 1 megabit, 2 megabits, and it does use the 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth. And a little uncommonly known fact is it's not only RF, but it's also infrared as well. 802.11a started in 1999, actually got released in 2001. And that standard is 54 megabits, and that's in the 5 gigahertz range. The other common one that started was 802.11b, which was actually an enhancement to the original 802.11, and that came out in 99, and that gave you both 5.5 and 11 megabits, with 11 being what was touted by the vendors. And all of these, the best source for this, and I'll give a list of references and some places to find more information later, but the best place to get a lot of this information, believe it or not, is Wikipedia. They have a list of all the standards, and they have a list of all the links. In addition to the other page of standards, here's one, and it also discusses some things that are coming up. For example, 802.11mb is a maintenance-only standard that's going to make some changes and kind of ratify, like 802.11I did, the changes that are made, encompass them all, and bring it up to date as of 2011. That's due out the end of this year. Two of them that actually I'm looking forward to, 802.11ac and AD, both are focusing on very high bandwidth, one being 6 gigabits and the other being 6 gigahertz frequency, the other being 60 gigahertz in frequency. Little known fact, how many people in here are amateur radio operators and hold a license? You guys can use more power on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency than the other people that don't carry a license do. Just so you know. Okay, physical layer. Yep. Wow. This is our color transition kind of crapped us out, Bob. Anyhow, this is what's supposed to be here is the frequencies for the various channels, and this may be better. You can see that the channels are staggered, and they'll tell you that there's only 3 non-overlapping channels, and you can see those are the 3 on the bottom, channel 1, channel 6, and channel 11. The way these work is each one has a certain width, and the frequencies are staggered. So you can see down at the bottom there, the 2412 is the center frequency for channel 1, 2417 channel 2, 2422 channel 3 on across. So you can see that there's overlaps, which is why it's kind of important that if you're setting up wireless at home, you need to go through and do some sort of a survey. There's a number of tools out, and just look at what is in your neighborhood and look at what channels they're using and try to figure a channel that you'll get the least amount of noise. One thing interesting about an 802.11b, G, and N is the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. Your microwave is on there. A lot of home-based cellular phones are on there, as well as wireless cameras. People that's got these wireless web cameras and stuff, they all share that, as well as the amateur radio band. So if you're getting interference, it could be you doing a DDoS to yourself. This was going to talk about the A5 and A&N 5 gigahertz band. Basically, there's 12 channels, and they range in frequency from 5.18 gigahertz all the way up to 5.805. So there's a lot of spread in there, 5.18 to 5.805. One of the things to be careful about, and this has been a problem, is this bottom note down here about interference with terminal Doppler weather. Some people that have tried to tweak the power on some of their cards to get additional power for A because it's extended distance and stuff, have been hit by the FCC for interfering with this commercial services on Doppler radar.
What do they show up as, dark cloud?
Say again?
What do they show up as with the Doppler radar?
It doesn't show up at all, Joe. You just interfere. You interfere with it, or it'll interfere with you. Usually, it's you interfering with it. So the weather people call the FCC. The FCC comes out with their little van and knocks on the door. By the way, any of you if nobody's ever had any experience with the FCC, I have. They are extremely good at being to pinpoint your exact location to the point of walking up, knocking on the door and saying, I'd like to talk to you about this radio you're using. You're bleeding over on frequencies. Had that happen in Georgia. Okay, the MAC address layer. On top here is a wired frame. On the bottom is a wireless frame. You'll notice they're not the same. So some of the key differences are in 802.3, which is wired Ethernet, there's only 2 address fields, your source and destination. In wireless, there are 4 address fields, address 1, 2, address 3, address 4. Although I've looked at a lot of packets and I have yet to see address 4 be used. But 1, 2, and 3, as you'll see here in a second, are quite commonly used. And they're used to identify source address, destination address, the transmitting station address, and the receiving station address. So if you look at the MAC frames, the one we want to talk the most about is the frame control. Frame control contains 2 bytes or 16 bits, and that's broken down below where you can see the version type, subtype, the from, to, how much power, and then some of the other non-standard ones. So if you look at a wireless frame, the version specifies what protocol number it is, and then the types, management frame is 00, control frame is 01, the data frame is 10, and 11 is not used. It's being reserved right now. So what you'll find is when data is being encapsulated over WLAN is the only time you'll see 10. And I see that commonly when using WPA and WP. So the subtype shows the association, clear to send, request to send, etc. We'll get a little more about those in a second. Moving right along. Okay, the management frame defines the network, or the SSID, the control client address, whether it's a probe request, response. It tells you what crypto is being used, goes into the beacons, and it'll even tell you if it's unencrypted. And here's the subtypes that you can get. So this makes it easy if you're looking at the packets to identify the packets. In addition to the fact if you use a tool like Wireshark, it'll tell you that it's an association response, reassociation, etc. So with your data frames, the original, keep in mind that layer 2 encryption is optional. You don't have to encrypt. So you can choose whether it's WEP, whether it's TKIP, whether it's AES. Those are options. And then the data layer encryption, SSH, SSL, IPsec, etc. are also optional. You have to select those when you set it up. So how does a client association work? First thing that happens, and keep in mind this is for an open wireless no encryption, is the station sends out a probe request, says, AP, are you there? And this is one of the things that a lot of people that ran Windows run into is that if you ever connect with Windows to a wireless access point, every time you turn yours on, it will send out a request for those wireless access points that you've connected to in the past. That's why a lot of people running the tools and stuff like AeroDump, you'll see all sorts of one client asking for multiple SSIDs. Fortunately, that's been patched and a lot of people have got it turned off now, but that's how a number of wireless attacks happened in the past. So when an AP receives the client's request, it comes back with a response. The client takes that response and goes back and says, okay, I want to do an authentication with you. Now this is an open authentication, so there's no encryption involved. And it comes back and it says, okay, AP says, yep, I'm open, connect to me. And the client says, okay, I want to associate now. AP comes back and says, you're free to associate. Once that sequence is done, then they can start sending traffic. So here's what a probe request looks like. This is from the Intel 384EDD is the source address, which you can see down here. Destination address is the D-Link wireless access point I had set up. And so did that, got the response back from the D-Link going back, and you can see here, you got your BSS ID is in here, so there's your destination, source, and 3. So there's the 3 addresses that I talked about earlier. And then the client comes back, sends an association request, association response, or authentication response, association request, and then it starts communicating traffic back and forth. Normally one of the first things that you'll see is a DHCP request where the client says, okay, now that we've associated, give me an IP address I can use to talk to this network. So let's talk a little bit about security. I like that cartoon. Wireless comes in and everybody runs. So some of the terms that we're going to use. Yes.
One really quick question. So the first 3 addresses you've got, the source address, the destination address, and I think the
BSS ID.
Right. So if you have 2 clients that are using an access point,
Yeah.
and client 1 wants to talk to client 2,
It has to go through the access point.
so the BSS ID is going to be that 3rd address.
No.
So that,
No.
So well, what I'm asking is the source is client A, and it wants to talk to client B.
Yep.
Will the source MAC address be the client A, and the destination MAC address be client B, and then the BSS be the access point? Is that the way it works?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
Okay.
Because that's what it's doing, and the BSS ID address 3 is used as a through point.
Okay.
That's the
I'll have to look at it.
That is encapsulated. It's encapsulated.
Okay.
So essentially, yes, it goes to the AP, and then it finally goes to the whatever the real destination is.
Right.
But the AP knows where it needs to go because the IP stack is inside of it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Glad somebody here knows. I've never looked at it. Yes.
So for the open system authentication, the only real authentication is they're exchanging IP address, MAC addresses, and just kind of registering that as who they're talking to?
Yes. Says, here, this is me. He says, this is me. These are some, and I apologize, when this was set up on a different presentation tool, and some of the glossary runs off the bottom of the screen. But one of the things in the next couple of slides, you're going to see all sorts of abbreviations and acronyms. And I'm old, I forget some of them, but I'll try. If you got any, I'll try to answer them. So, WEP. We talked about the other things. The thing I want to point out with WEP primarily is if you look over here on the far right in that second field, the only thing that's encrypted is the actual data and the ICV4, your 4th initialization vector. What is it? Initial? Yeah, I forget. Anyhow, and it's broken down into the initialization vector is broken down, and the initialization vector is what makes WEP so vulnerable because it will repeat after a time. You've only got 4 bytes, and those 4 4 bytes keep repeating themselves over and over again, so that once you get so many of them, then you can come up with the key. Because as you'll see here, the way WEP encryption is constructed is you take the initialization vector and the WEP key. Those two get concatenated together, and then that becomes your seed. Then you run your seed through the RC4 algorithm with a pseudo-random number that's generated, and the output of that goes to an XOR. And what it's XORed with is the plain text together with a redundancy check. So that once in that concatenated, goes to the XOR, and what comes out is your ciphertext, but you're also sending, remember that IV packet is sent as part of the encrypted stream and is also in the clear. So if you know some part of what's in that packet, that's the way you can break it, because you have the equivalent of something that's actually known in there. So when you get enough, you're able to sit there and see what happens mathematically.
John?
Yes.
Wasn't the initial attack on this that the random number generator wasn't being seeded randomly? So the sequence of random numbers was predictable.
Right, but keep in mind, it's not a random, it's pseudo-random.
Yeah.
So it's
That's why
not,
it's a sequence.
there's really no such thing as a real random number in computers.
4.
Yeah, 32. Okay, so how do you decrypt? Again, you've got the WEP key, you've got the IV, and you bring it back through there, and you can see the IV is still taken, and it's just reversing the process. And if anybody can ever figure out how to build a slide like this for WPA2, please see me. I need one. I've tried and failed miserably. So, probe response packet, an authentication request, authentication response, association request, association response is all the same thing occurs with WEP that occurs in plain text, except you've got that encrypted packet there. So what's WPA? WPA was introduced from the Wi-Fi Alliance because WEP was broken. They knew it, and it was put out almost immediately, and the delay was that even though it came out early and people knew, it took the manufacturers about 2 years after the announcement of all the WEP being broken to actually issue the gear that had WPA in it. WPA uses RC4 stream cipher the same as WEP. So it kept that same RC4 and pseudo-random generator. It just used, and it was brought out as a subset as 802.11i, which is the WPA standard. And TKIP got introduced here, and while RC4 still has not been broken, right, Rob? Right? Okay, I thought. To my knowledge, RC4 has not been broken, but the deficiency with WPA was TKIP. TKIP has been broken. So that's why they came out with, and it has both in them. That's why they came out with WPA2.
How is TKIT broken?
Temporal.
Get compromised.
How is it compromised?
They do something where they reduce the key space you had brute force.
Yes.
The problem with it is that it allows injection of a few, like 2 or 3 packets, I think the max was 4, into the stream. That didn't have to be encrypted.
Okay.
Oh, so you could like force an ARP request and get
Yep.
known packets to come out or something.
If you could time those ARP packets correctly, yes.
Yes.
Explaining it on a pen test is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Right, you're not breaking it, you're hijacking it, essentially. You're just putting things in.
So WPA2 came out in 2004, and it's an 802.11i 2004, which amended the original 802.11i. So it was a follow-on to WPA, And what it did was it replaced TKIP with CCMP, or cipher block with chaining message authentication control, authentication code protocol. Whew. And a lot of times in some of the books and stuff, you'll see WPA2, also called Robust Security Network, or abbreviated RSN. And again, just like WPA, it supports both the personal as well as the enterprise modes. So, pre-shared key, intended for small businesses and home. It's probably what, I'd say 95% of the people in here that are running wireless at home run. Can use up to a 256-bit key, and the password, your passphrase, password, whatever you want to call it, that you create can be anywhere from 8 to 63 characters. And if you're using fewer than, I'd say about 20, I strongly recommend you go change it. The enterprise mode, or what's known as 802.1x, requires a radius authentication server, and it also introduced the extensible authentication protocol, or EAP. And because this is a basic course, I'm not going to go into how this works, and I'm still trying to build that slide I talked to you guys about. So, with WPA, yes, Rob?
Does enterprise mode still use pre-shared keys?
No. It can, but typically it doesn't. So the way this one works, the four-way handshake, is that an ANOTS, and an ANOTS is just some pseudo-random number that's generated by the AP, is broadcast. The AP sits there and sends out an ANOTS. The station takes it, uses that ANOTS to create what's called the primary temporal key, and then goes back with that primary temporal key and sends an SNOTS for station random number, plus the message identification, message integrity check. Yeah, message integrity check. So taking the message integrity check, the AP then takes that, recalculates it, looks to make sure that its nonce was correct, and when it is, it says, okay, here's my general temporal key, or global temporal key, and a message integrity check. The client takes that, installs that key, sends back an ACK, and then from the key gets installed on the AP that's associated with that client, and then they communicate with each other.
So is this basically a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, or is it different?
It's different.
Sounds kind of like one. Okay.
It may be Diffie-Hellman. I've not seen any documentation that refers to Diffie-Hellman, and I think it's actually different.
Okay.
So an ANOTS packet is just a very large number. The SNOTS plus the MIC gets back the NOTS plus the RSC and the MIC. Then the ACK goes back with the MIC, so he says, okay, this is the number that I've got, this is a key, and that's it. So some references that I used, Wikipedia, most of this stuff was pulled right out of there, especially the definitions. The IEEE 802.11 standard, if any of you are somewhat cursed with insomnia, I highly recommend this as bedside reading. It'll kill you. It's almost like reading a military tech manual. There's so damn many things in it. Security tube. I don't know how many of you follow it, but this guy's in India, and he has got a ton, including an entire course on breaking WPA and WEP, but a ton of videos. They're all short, 15, 20, 30-minute videos, and they're real well done.
Vivek.
Yeah, Vivek. He's also giving a class on wireless day one, that starts day one of Black Hat. Microsoft TechNet. There's a series in there called The Cable Guy that's got some real good, short, sweet explanations of wireless security. Hacking Express wireless security secrets and solutions, and Waifu. These two are really my Bible. And if you're really interested in this, Offensive Security has a Backtrack Waifu course. It's fairly inexpensive and is really a good primer. They give you a nice PDF file with a whole bunch of background on the wireless technology and stuff. They talk a lot about devices and the theory behind it and everything, so that you get a fairly comprehensive understanding. And if you go through the course, which is you set up your own AP, you do everything in your house, if you take the challenge exam, you VPN into their lab, their wireless lab, and they give you a couple of challenges that you have to complete within a 4-hour period. Send them the information. If you got it right, you pass, they give you a certification. It's called an OSWP. Any questions? Yes.
You talk a lot about security at lower layers, and I'm wondering, why does it make sense to do security there versus just jump up to like IPsec or something like that?
Well, keep in mind, IPsec will run over wireless. You've still got the wireless there, and we strongly encourage, and another presentation that I'm doing in the Wireless Village is going to be one on what you should do to secure your wireless when you use it. And things like running VPN tunnels, SSH-D, open VPN to a Linode server, some public box or whatever, whenever you're using open Wi-Fi, and doing things like IPsec. But finding support for IPsec outside the enterprise is very, very difficult. Very few, if any, home users run IPsec. And I'm gearing these talks more towards the home users to get people, because I still do war driving, and I still find lots and lots of open access points and people running WEP, especially in homes where Verizon comes in and their default installation for FiOS is WEP. And the MAC address used to be part of the key.
There's a reason for that, by the way.
Yeah?
They used to get really pissed off when people would go and buy peripheral devices like printers that wouldn't be supported of WPA. So these people would call up the ISPs pissed off saying, come fix my network. They kept having to send texts out, so they just said, let's put web out and everything.
Yeah, well, first thing I did was shut off the wireless and use my own.
Don't tell my neighbor because I like him out of nowhere.
That's your backup, right?
That's me troubleshooting my connection.
Yes, Ben.
Can I chime in there for a second on
Sure.
something? One, did you talk about hidden SSIDs at all?
No,
Yeah, so that's one of my major pet peeves as a wireless hacker.
I don't believe in obscurity through obscurity. It doesn't work.
The concept of hidden SSID as being a security thing is BS.
Yep.
In fact, actually turning on a hidden SSID actually makes you less secure. The reason why is the way the wireless client behaves is it actually has to broadcast a probe request for the network name.
Yep.
Connect to it, which means it's going most likely going to continue to do that constantly. And because you're broadcasting probe requests, you're now susceptible to karma-based attacks, you're susceptible to air-based, things like that.
Fake AP.
There is still, I hear all the time, oh, we'll just hide your SID and you're fine. That
Yep.
doesn't work that way.
Cool. I'll put that in my other talk.
What about MAC address filtering? Does that help?
You can,
From common people, yes. Would it help from the people in this room? No. Because your MAC address is broadcast as part of that packet. Remember, source destination? So when you associate, if I run AeroDump gives me the SSID MAC address of the AP you're connected to, and it gives me your address. So if I try to connect to it with a password and it won't let me, first thing I do is change my MAC to match yours.
Is there any way to spoof your AP's MAC address?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the MAC address stuff though because it helps prove intent.
Yeah.
So from a defensive standpoint, it kind of proves.
Well, if you run encryption, you're proving intent anyhow.
Somewhat.
Next? Yes.
So I guess switching a little bit to the enterprise side.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So just curious, those RSN supports the TKIP as well as the CCMP. How many organizations are actually still running TKIP?
Or worse.
More than you think.
What did I think?
Well,
Okay.
why?
If you don't already know,
The hardware forces them to do that, and a lot of
and if you don't already know, IEEE has already planned to deprecate that.
Right.
So it's history already. So I guess the hardware was supposed to start coming out in 2006 or something, right?
Yeah, it's been CCMP has been supported in hardware since, about 6 or 7.
And the second thing, the EAP TLS, how many instances is the TLS actually supporting the RC4 cipher suite in the enterprise? Because that's something you actually have to go in and disable, right?
Yeah.
Is that like pretty common as well?
Yeah, no, most of the networks that I've come across.
It's turned on automatically. You have to physically disable it to turn it off.
But you had to actually disable the RC4.
Uses PSK.
It's part of the protocol, the TLS protocol.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and talk to.
I thought it had multiple options.
I don't-
I set up an Aruba recently and it was.
TLS by default
Yeah,
includes
it's negotiating.